you for tuning in. I am Jasmine from Around the Hook and Back. Today I'm going to jump right into your very first stitch, which is the single crochet. It is the basis to a lot of projects. It is the basis to a lot of simple projects, but can also be very meaningful to turn out to something really beautiful. Um, Today, though, I'm just going to show you the single crochet so that you can make a swatch, which is obviously just a sample piece of something that you want to create. And depending on the size, you will obviously add rows. You can reduce rows and things like that, but that's something I can show you down the line. So for now, housekeeping, we're going to go over materials. You will need a crochet hook, obviously. This is a 4 millimeter hook, and you can see with the number that's on the side of the hook, and most hooks that you get from the store will tell you um, what size they are when you get a kit, which is very important. I highly recommend that. Next, you will need a stitch marker. Stitch markers also come in kits. They're really good to help you keep your spot of where you are in your project without having to get lost, especially when you're learning to count stitches. It's really important to have those stitch markers in place. I can honestly say I did not use them a lot when I first started crocheting, but as I started doing more advanced stitches and bigger projects, I definitely needed them. So I definitely use them a lot now. And you can buy them in bulk as well for pretty cheap. Last thing you'll need outside of the yarn, of course, is a pair of really good scissors. These were actually gifted to me. They're really beautiful. I love them. They're stork sewing scissors, and I really like them because they're particularly more sharp than regular scissors. And you can use any scissors that you have. I just recommend a pair that has a really good cut, but also that you can just keep specifically for your crochet needs. All right, without further ado, let's get into it. For this project, a red heart yarn. This yarn, and that you can experiment as much as you want with it without sacrificing the quality too much. And so just a couple of things to know. Like I said, yarn is yarn. People that knit and crochet, you will see us using a lot of the same yarn all the time, and that's perfectly fine, which is why they have these diagrams that are on the back of your, if you can see it. It is on the back of your yarn that you purchase usually, and it always has these 3 different diagrams on it. One of them is for knitting, one is for crocheting, and one is just telling you like the weight and the number of the yarn. Starting with the weight of the yarn and the number, that just basically represents how heavy your yarn is, and not 4 as in 4 pounds, but it's more like telling you how many strands it took to get a specific type of weight. So like this medium weight yarn is really good for making stuff like sweaters and hats and gloves and scarves and stuff like that that are warm enough, and you kind of get that snug feeling but not too heavy where you get really hot as if you're making a blanket. And that's usually what they're referring to with these sizes. Next is the crochet hook. As I mentioned, most of the, if not all of the yarn that you ever buy will always have a recommended hook size. For this, it says 5.5. I'm actually just going to use a 5 milliliter hook. Another one, I will get the 5 one, but I'm going to just use a 5 milliliter hook. I always say that it's safe to usually size down a size and a half. So I can either use a 5 or a 4, and I think I will still get the same type of results, but it will matter in terms of how big your stitches are. And usually like the tension that you use, and so that's why certain yarn has certain weight. So if you go to try to use a smaller crochet hook, what will happen is sometimes it will kind of go in between your threads and it will kind of unravel it, and you don't want that. So I usually say it's safe to do about a size and a half down if you want to change your hook size. Lastly, this is also the recommended sizes for a crochet needle, and as you can see, this is a 5 milliliter like tools that they're using. So like I said, like it really just kind of depends on the stitch, what kind of work you're doing, and what you want it to look like. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, first things first, I'm going to switch my needle size really quick. All right, I have my 5 now. And so in my last video, I showed you how to create a slip knot as well as chain. If you did not watch that video first, I recommend you go do that first. The first thing I'm going to do is make a slip knot. So if you remember, I'm going to, or if you're new, this is the first one you're watching, I'm going to yarn over my finger, and then I'm going to cross my tail like so, put between my thumb and my middle finger, and then I'm going to cross over again. The yarn closest to my knuckle, I'm going to lift up and over, and then I will have one loop left on my finger. I'm going to pull up, and now I have my slip knot. Once you have your slip knot, you are now going to insert your hook like so, and you're just going to pull a little bit to get that loop a little tighter around your hook. Not too tight where you can't actually function with it, but just enough where you can comfortably not have a huge amount of slack. So then I am going to hold my yarn like I normally do, which is like this. Then, for the sake of this, I'm actually just going to chain 10. Okay, as you can see, I now have 10 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So you might notice that close to the tail, there's always like this little knot down here that looks like it can pass for a loop, but it's actually just where your slip knot was. And to avoid that confusion, I'm actually going to put a stitch marker down there so that I know that that is not a stitch or that's not a chain. So that way I can keep track of where I'm going, but I also don't accidentally create more stitches than I need, because that's how your work can kind of become sideways and crooked. So another thing to note, although I have my 10 chains here, I still have the loop on my hook. That never counts as a stitch, because as you obviously try to go through and come out, you will unravel it. So what you will do anytime you are turning your work or starting a row, you will usually either chain 1 or 2 depending on the type of stitch you use and etc. So I still have the same amount of stitches, but now I actually have the slack to continue to have my 10 stitches. So in order to do a single crochet, as you can see in my chain, there is a, try to get up close for you. In my chain, there is a hole. This little hole here, right there in the middle, that is where I'm going to insert my hook. So I'll show you. Remember that that's my extra chain, and this is my hook and my loop. So that hole in between there, I am going to insert my hook like so. And as you can see, my hook is now in between the top and the bottom of my yarn from that first chain. And so then from there, I'm going to yarn over. So that's yarn overing the hook like so. Then I'm going to turn my hook. I'm going to turn my hook so that it can catch the yarn, and I'm going to pull through my hole, and you should end up with 2 loops on your hook. And then from there, you're going to yarn over again and pull through those 2 loops, and you will end up with 1 loop. And that is called a single crochet. So you are going to repeat this all the way down, and I will meet you in the back. Okay, welcome back. So you should have single crocheted all the way down your row until you met your stitch marker. So as you can see, I have a very different shape now, and all I did was just single crochet all the way down, and now you have a top of your work which looks like this. I always kind of say it looks like a little bit of a braid, how you kind of have that perfect little arrow shape, and that is the top of your work. And now your work doesn't just look like a chain anymore in the side, it looks like this. So this is what the front of your work will look like. And then here is what the back of your work will look like. And it's usually a little bit more bumpy and a little bit more close together. And that's what you want. So in order to continue this, my stitch marker is now going to turn on this side. And all I'm going to do for that is to continue my work, I'm going to chain one like this. And then I'm just simply going to turn my work. I'm going to hold my stitch marker so you can see, and I'm just going to flip it over to the other side. So as you can see, we are back on the back of my work. My stitch marker has now moved to the bottom, but I still have my loop on my hook. And so to make it easier for you, instead of having your yarn in front of your work like this, you just want to kind of loop it on over to the back, and now you just have back where you started. So I've already chained one, and now it's time to go back in and single crochet down the line. So this is your loop closest to your hook, which is where your loop is connected and where you chain one. That does not count as a stitch. What you're actually going to do is there is a hole there now, and that's where you're going to insert your hook again to make your single crochet for your second row. So you're just going to insert in the hole. You're going to yarn over, draw up a loop, and now you have two. Then you're going to yarn over, pull through, and now we have our first single crochet on our second row. And again, there's that second hole for the second one. Just going to insert, yarn over, and pull through that hole. Draw up a loop where there will be two. Then you're going to pull through, and that's two. And you're just going to repeat this all the way down until you get to the end. So I wanted to show you something. As you develop more rows, it will start to look a little bit more complicated, and it's kind of easy to see how it may cut off here. But if you look closely, and that's why you should count your stitches, is I actually only have 9 stitches at the top. So, and as I chained one, that chain one is here, so that's not a stitch, and you're really just kind of counting all the way down here. So I still got one more insert to do, and typically the ones on the end are a little bit tighter, so that's why they're confusing, which is why you should keep a stitch marker on your end so you can keep track of your stitches. So we're going to insert our last one, pull up 2, yarn over, and now we have 1. And so as we turn it, now you can see that it evens out now, and I have a solid corner. And just to help me out further, I'm going to insert my stitch marker again at the end so that I am keeping track on both ends. And now I'm going to do the same thing as I did before. I'm going to chain 1. I'm going to turn my work. And you can really do an extra stitch on the end where it kind of looks like I'm just going to insert it again, chain 1. And I'm just going to, again, single crochet in that first hole there. That's my first hole. I'm going to insert my hook in that first hole, yarn over, pull through. I have 2 loops, pull through. Now I have 1. You're just going to continue to do that all the way down. And now we're back at the end. And this is what your work should look like so far. That is all I got for you.